Monday morning's early shift. Woke up like it's time again. Gotta punch the clock, put in the work. Bags under my eyes, yeah, my body.
You know, tattoos tell stories. Some remind us where we've been, some remind us who we've loved, and some mark the moments that changed us forever. That's why when it comes to putting something permanent on your skin, you want an artist who understands that every piece means something. Brian Garcia isn't just a tattoo artist. He's a craftsman. Whether you're looking for black and gray realism, custom artwork, script, memorial pieces, cover-ups, or that one design you've been thinking about for years, Brian takes the time to get it right. No shortcuts. No rushed work. Just quality tattoos created by someone who genuinely cares about his craft. You'll find Skindless Ink Tattoo Studio at 722 Fort Worth Drive in Denton, Texas. Walk-ins are welcome, or schedule your consultation today by calling 940-383-0337. And make sure to check out Brian's work on Instagram at Skindless Ink. Because bad decisions make good stories, but bad tattoos last a whole lot longer. Trust your skin to Brian Garcia and the team at Skindless Ink Tattoo Studio. Hey y'all, welcome back to She Loved Me Best in Secret. I'm your host, Ryder Knox, and first off, thank y'all for coming back. Because tonight's one of those chapters where you're sitting there listening and thinking, well, that's a terrible idea. And then 5 minutes later, you're thinking, okay, but I kind of understand it. And that's how people end up in trouble. See, most bad decisions don't show up looking like bad decisions. If they did, nobody would make them. They'd show up wearing a warning label. Attention, this person is about to absolutely wreck your emotional stability. But that's not how it works. They usually show up looking attractive. They laugh at your jokes. They remember little things about you. They text back, which nowadays apparently qualifies somebody for sainthood. And before you know it, you're sitting there convincing yourself that the person making your life dramatically more complicated is actually bringing you peace. That's where Connor is. Poor Connor. My man's about to confuse peace with passion, attention with love, and chaos with destiny. Which, if we're being honest, is basically the relationship version of shopping hungry at Costco. You went in for one thing. Now you're leaving with a kayak, 12 pounds of beef jerky, and problems you didn't have 30 minutes ago. And ladies, let's not act like y'all are innocent in this story either. Because Grace is about to discover that the fastest way to drive yourself crazy. She used to have no problems giving silence, but now that her and Connor must go silent to get Graham off their track, it's gonna make Grace go crazy. Not because he's doing anything wrong, but because your imagination has never once lost an argument. Ever. You can turn a 2-hour delayed text message into a full FBI investigation. You've already solved the case, presented evidence, conducted interviews, built a timeline, and sentenced the poor guy before he even gets off work. Meanwhile, he's over there trying to figure out why his phone died. So tonight, we're going to talk about silence. We're going to talk about jealousy. We're going to talk about Christmas. And we're going to talk about what happens when two people fall so hard for each other that reality starts feeling like the obstacle. And trust me, by the end of this chapter, you're going to realize Graham isn't the only thing standing between Connor and Grace. Not even close. So grab a beer, pour a bourbon, or if you're trying to make good life decisions, maybe just grab a water. Because the people in this story sure aren't. Let's get into chapter 6. After the Texas OU game, everything changed. Or maybe that's not true. Maybe nothing changed at all. Maybe Connor and Grace had already crossed the line long before that weekend. The difference was that after Texas and Oklahoma, neither of them could pretend anymore. What started as stolen conversations had become something else, something bigger, something dangerous. And the stronger their feelings became, the more careful they had to be, because somebody was starting to notice. At least Connor thought so. Grace didn't. She thought Connor was seeing ghosts, thought he was letting paranoia get the better of him. But Connor couldn't shake the feeling. Something was off. Something was watching them. And then Graham did what Graham always did when he felt something slipping away. He spent money. A brand new Lexus, fully loaded, every option, every feature, every luxury imaginable. Grace saw a husband buying his wife a gift. Connor saw something entirely different. Because Connor didn't see a car, he saw a leash, a beautiful one. The kind you don't notice until it's already around your neck. The Lexus came equipped with everything: GPS tracking, vehicle diagnostics, driving history, location services, notifications, data. Enough information to make a curious husband curious. Enough information to make a suspicious husband dangerous. The meetings didn't stop, they just became harder. A CVS parking lot, a hospital, a park across town. 30 minutes here, 45 minutes there, always looking over their shoulders, always wondering if someone knew. And every time they met, Connor found himself saying the same thing. "It's the car." Grace would shake her head. Tell him he was overreacting. Tell him Graham wasn't that smart. Tell him Graham wasn't paying that much attention. But eventually life has a way of proving people wrong. So they decided to do something bigger, something risky. Austin. Grace had a friend there, Ryan. And calling him a friend was probably generous. Ryan wasn't exactly someone you trusted, he was someone you tolerated. But he gave them what they needed, a reason, a cover story. Grace picked a fight with Graham, a real one. Big enough to make him stay home with the kids. Big enough to justify her storming out. Then she called Connor. And Connor made his own excuses. Parked his vehicle, met her. And together they climbed into the very thing he'd been worried about all along. Her car. The Lexus. The leash. But once they reached Austin, none of that seemed to matter. For the first time in months they could breathe. No hiding, no rushing, no checking mirrors, no worrying about who might see them. They shopped, they laughed. They walked side by side. They sat in bars, talked for hours, acted like normal people, like a normal couple, like two people building a life instead of borrowing moments. They even met Ryan at Hooters, because of course Ryan wanted to meet at Hooters. Connor played nice, smiled when he needed to, answered questions, tolerated the stories. But Ryan wasn't someone Connor trusted, and when Ryan offered his couch for the night, Connor immediately declined. No chance. They got a hotel, just the two of them, and for one night, the world felt quiet. The fear disappeared, the pressure disappeared, the lies disappeared. For one brief moment, it was just theirs. Just Connor, just Grace, just love. But freedom has a way of demanding payment, and theirs came outside Temple. A blown tire, one loud pop, one small inconvenience, one devastating mistake. Because the second that tire blew, the Lexus notified Graham. Instantly. Connor didn't know it yet. Grace didn't know it yet. But hundreds of miles away, Graham's phone lit up, and moments later he called, his voice calm. Too calm. What happened? Grace explained, told him she had a flat, told him she'd call AAA. Simple, normal, reasonable. Then Graham asked a question. One question. And suddenly nothing felt normal anymore. Why call AAA? Why not have Connor change it? Silence. The kind of silence that makes your stomach drop. Grace's heart stopped. Connor's did too. Connor's not here, she said. But Graham wasn't buying it, because Graham wasn't guessing. He was watching. I'm looking at the data, he told her. Someone sitting in the passenger seat. He didn't know it was Connor, not for certain. But he knew she wasn't alone. And somehow that felt worse, because it meant Connor had been right all along. The car wasn't a gift, it was surveillance. Grace didn't argue, didn't explain, didn't give Graham what he wanted. She ended the call. Connor got out, changed the tire, and they finished the drive home. But neither of them said much, because the damage wasn't the tire, the damage was certainty. Now they knew. Graham wasn't clueless, and after that day, Grace finally believed Connor. Not suspected, not wondered, believed. So they disappeared. No phone calls, no meeting spots, no routines, no risks. Silent mode. And while Connor understood exactly why it had to happen, Grace struggled with it more than she ever imagined. At first, she told herself she could handle it. A few days, maybe a week, maybe two. Just enough time for Graham to relax. Just enough time for the suspicion to fade. But silence does strange things to people, especially people in love. Because silence creates space. And space creates questions. What was Connor doing? Who was he talking to? Was he okay? Did he miss her? Did he still think about her before he went to sleep? Did he still replay Austin the way she did? The less she heard from him, the louder those questions became. Every day without him felt longer than the day before, and eventually her imagination became louder than reality. So she started reaching out. Carefully, subtly, a joke, a random question, a casual message. Nothing obvious, nothing dangerous, just little reminders, tiny breadcrumbs, ways of saying I miss you without saying I miss you. Ways of asking, "Are we okay?" without actually asking. She'd tell him not to forget about them, not to forget what they had, not to forget their love. But Connor wasn't forgetting, not even close. He wasn't looking for someone else. He wasn't moving on. He wasn't second-guessing a single thing he felt. He loved her, completely. But he also understood something Grace didn't. Sometimes distance isn't rejection. Sometimes distance is protection. So he waited, patiently, quietly, loving her from a distance because that was the only way he knew how to keep her safe. And then Christmas arrived on the horizon, the holiday Grace dreaded more than any other. Because Christmas meant family. Christmas meant pretending. Christmas meant sitting beside Graham and acting like everything was fine, smiling for photos, opening presents, making small talk, living inside a life she no longer wanted. The closer Christmas got, the more trapped she felt. And Connor heard it in every message, every hint, every complaint, every late-night confession. She wasn't looking forward to any of it. And Connor tried to help. He listened, encouraged her, reminded her she wasn't alone. But Connor had obligations too. Parents, grandparents, traditions. Every year he took Serena and the kids to San Antonio. Every year. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't a getaway. It wasn't some grand declaration of loyalty. It was Christmas. It was family. It was what he'd always done. But somewhere inside Grace, something changed. Maybe it was the silence. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was jealousy. Maybe it was finally realizing how much she had to lose. Or maybe it was realizing how much she already had. Whatever it was, one day it finally came out. The truth, raw, unfiltered, terrifying. She told Connor she loved him. Not implied it, not hinted at it, said it, out loud. She told him she wanted to leave Graham. She told him she wanted a future with him, a real one. And then she gave him an ultimatum. If you go to San Antonio with Serena and the kids for Christmas, we're done. Connor was stunned, because nothing about it made sense. Grace was spending Christmas with her family too. She was still living under the same roof as Graham. Both of them were trapped inside lives they were trying to survive. But logic wasn't what was speaking. Pain was. Fear was. Love was. She could picture him in another city. She could picture Serena beside him. She could picture Christmas morning, family dinners, photos, laughter, and every image felt like a knife. Connor tried to reason with her, tried to explain, tried to remind her that neither of them had the freedom they wished they had, that both of them still had roles to play, that San Antonio didn't change a single thing about how he felt. But logic wasn't winning. Emotion was. And eventually Grace admitted something. She knew she wasn't being fair. She knew the ultimatum wasn't reasonable. She knew it didn't make sense, but she couldn't stop feeling it. If you go, it'll break my heart. I can't stand the thought of it. And then she said it again, one final time. If you go to San Antonio for Christmas, we're done. And for the first time since Austin, Connor realized they weren't just fighting Graham anymore. They were fighting fear. And fear had become something neither of them knew how to control. Because sometimes the greatest threat to a love story isn't another person. It's the fear of losing the person you love. And fear can destroy things just as completely as betrayal ever could. Even while Connor and Grace were fighting their own battle, Graham never let his guard down. The silence between them didn't convince him that everything was fine. He stayed watchful, paying attention to every move Grace made. But Grace had a plan of her own. She reassured him constantly, telling him she loved him, needed him, and that the fears consuming him were nothing more than stories he'd created in his own mind. Little by little, she convinced him to seek therapy and start medication. Deep down, Graham still felt something wasn't right. But with every convincing word from the woman he loved, he began to wonder if maybe he really was driving himself crazy.
Damn, Pops. I don't even know what to believe anymore. At first, I felt bad for Grace. Then, I felt bad for Connor.
Then I got mad at Grace.
Then, I understood Grace. Then Grace is gaslighting Graham. Then I got frustrated with Connor. Then I understood Connor. Now I'm sitting here wondering if they're both in love or if they're both just terrified. Because let's be honest, the Austin trip wasn't really about Austin. The tire wasn't really about the tire. And Christmas wasn't really about Christmas. It feels like everybody in this story is fighting something different. Connor's fighting patience. Grace is fighting fear. Graham's fighting suspicion. And somehow, all three of them are losing. What gets me is Grace giving Connor that ultimatum. I get why she felt that way. I really do. But at the same time, my guy's just trying to take his kids to see their grandparents for Christmas. That's a tough sell. Then again, when your heart gets involved, logic usually gets escorted out the building. So, I don't know, man. Part of me thinks Grace is finally realizing how much she loves Connor. And another part of me thinks she's realizing how much she has to lose. Either way, silent mode might have kept Graham from finding out, but it sure didn't stop everybody from losing their minds. And now we've got Christmas coming. We've got an ultimatum on the table. We've got two people who love each other. And we've got absolutely no clue how this ends, which is probably why all of y'all keep coming back. And honestly, we're glad you do. Thank you for listening. Menazum. Thank you, Connor, for sharing the story. Thank you for telling your friends about She Loved Me Best in Secret.
Monday morning's early shift. Woke up like it's time again. Gotta punch the clock, put in the work. Bags under my eyes, yeah, my body hurts. I can't complain. Nah, it ain't no big deal. Ain't no white collars here, 'cause I got blue collar bills. These worn hands